Well, good time of day to all of you, my chess friends. This is Grandmaster Yermolinsky here in my home studio. Well, it's not technically speaking in the garage, but it's in the kind of a lower level of the house. Yeah, I said, yeah, good time of day, of course. Pretty cool summer day in South Dakota today. Well, so I'm covering my shoulders not to get frozen here while I'm doing all this stuff. But you know what summer means for us chess players? It used to mean the World Open for me. No, not anymore. It used to mean US Open, which is taking place now as we speak in Phoenix, Arizona. It used to mean a lot of things, but now it means only one thing for me. Chess camps. That's what it is. And well, I attended one for the 4th year in a row. It's in Minnesota, not far from here. Funny that there are still places out there that are not far from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's like bizarre, right? Anyway, well, camps are fun. Although I worked a lot, of course, over there during the camp, long days, many lectures and other stuff, but I still had time to follow current chess news. And kind of thankfully it was kind of a quiet moment. Relatively speaking. I guess, while with all the top players just preparing and getting ready for the big event in St. Louis. Yeah, the Sinquefield Cup, the 3rd Sinquefield Cup. And now part of the new Grand Chess Tour, promoted by Garry Kasparov. Okay, so what do we have over there? They already played their first stage in Stavanger, yeah, Norway, of course, Norway chess. The tournament that is probably going to be remembered as the worst tournament performance by Magnus Carlsen in recent memory. Okay. Yeah, you probably remember the format of this. So they've selected 9 players to play in all 3 tournaments this year. The 3rd tournament is going to be the London Classic, traditionally always held in December. 9 players have been pre-selected. And that's kind of, I would say now top 6 players in the world, right? And, okay, so that would be Carlsen, of course, Anand, Topalov, Nakamura, and Caruana, and Anish Giri. Okay, Anish is firmly in there. Anish is going to take the rating spot and play in the candidates tournament. I'm completely assured of that. Then they had 2 guys that used to be ranked very high and had number 2 position for one of them for some time, the other one for years. So there was Russian Alexander Grishuk and Armenian Levon Aronin. These guys kind of fell off the cliff, but they're still not that far off, but maybe 20 points or so. And the 9th player, okay, the 10th player is going to be added by the organizers. And thankfully, of course, the Sinquefield Cup being held in America, they had a pleasant choice over there, but I mean the choice was also very obvious. They just gave the spot to Wesley So, which normally should be there by rating alone, but some other circumstances prevented Wesley from playing in all 3 tournaments, which I believe is an injustice. Well, what can you do? You limit the number of sweet spots to whatever a number is, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 16, 100. There is always going to be one guy, who finds himself just out by a small margin. And this guy is going to be complaining and is going to be unhappy, and his fans are going to be unhappy. That's how it works. No, you can't please everyone, and it probably neither Kasparov or the Norwegian organizers or Rex Sinquefield or his wife or his house cat, None of them is really in the business of pleasing everyone. They're in the business of running chess tournaments the way they see fit. And this is how it's going to be. But the question that everybody has is, what about the 10th guy? Why is the Frenchman Vachier-Lagrave is there? He is only rated, and then going maybe a month or two back, they would say, 27-30. Yeah. That's what happened to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. He was going only in one direction for the whole year, since last year's Sinquefield Cup, where he was invited in this elite group of players for the first time. He kept moving only in one direction, which is down. Down. And, okay, but now he needs to catch fire, because there isn't much time left for Vachier-Lagrave to get back in shape before the second event of the tour. Alright, that's him now. Doesn't look very depressed. Hey, why would you be depressed? Well, first of all, you're 25, I assume. Yeah, he was born the same year as Magnus Carlsen, 1990. You're 25 years old. You're a Frenchman, and you're a very good chess player. You travel the world. You're welcome everywhere. You're a celebrity. Okay, time to make the best out of this, Maxime. Alright. You saw already on the starting soon thing, right? He did play in the Biel International Tournament, and he won it for the 4th time, which is remarkable in his young career. Well, the Biel tournament has been around, and honestly, the Biel tournament has seen better days. But nonetheless, this year it had a steady field of serviceable grandmasters, a nice mix of youth and experience. The experience part was provided by Mickey Adams. The youth, I guess, by Richard Rapport, although the young Hungarian had a disaster of the tournament, finishing only with 2 points. And okay, well, I don't know what's going on with him, but I know the talent is there, but it's not the first time when a young Hungarian player just simply doesn't have the mental stamina to go through the rigors of chess competition. Now, I've seen this before with Adorian and Ribley, and later we had Peter Hatch, and we had some other guys, Biel. I mean, they're serviceable players, but I mean, they're still nowhere, not in the Lash Portishes league. Obviously, there's Peter Leko. Okay, great tradition. So, anyway, Rapport was the youngest player. Now, they had Wojtaszek, always an interesting player, long-time coach of Vishy Anand. Yeah, Ron, you talk about Rapport, yeah, and sound openings. No, well, yeah, that's true. And I'm not gonna, well, I think I'm gonna catch one of the games of his, but anyway, I've been talking for too long. I just waited for you people to gather around. Anyway, about Vachier-Lagrave, this tournament seemed like another affair to forget for him, because he had a bunch of draws, won one game, and then he lost a game, and got thrown back to 50%, with Wojtaszek is way ahead of him, and Navarro also somewhere in the mix, and also Mickey Adams tried to make some kind of comeback after a bad start in the tournament. And then, only with 3 rounds to go in round 8, I will remind you guys that there were 6 players there who played each other twice. So altogether, over these 2 legs of this tournament, that's 10 games. So round 8, we have Vachier-Lagrave with white against Mickey Adams. Mickey just had this longish game, 120-something moves, which he finally converted his big advantage against Richard Rapport and scored the victory that put Mickey over the top, you know, scored +1. But obviously, even if the game wasn't really that difficult for Mickey, just the sheer amount of time he had to spend at the chessboard the night before probably tired him out. No, Mickey is not a spring chicken anymore. He's been around, well, quite some time. I assume he's in his early to mid 40s. I think he was born in 1971. Anyway, so Vachier-Lagrave maps out a very efficient strategy. That's something that I really had not seen much in the games of the super talented Frenchman. I saw him playing deep theoretical lines and showing excellent theoretical knowledge. I saw him attacking and sacrificing and showing imagination and fantasy and flair, you know, fit, you know, in French culture, put it this way. I'm going to be stereotyping here big time. It's not going to be long before I start calling MVL a musketeer. But so what? Anyway, so that flair was always... But maybe that year of sputtering, you know, that he suffered through, maybe it helped him in some ways, and he started thinking about addressing every game in a specific fashion and preparing in particular for every opponent. Alright, so there it goes. Now, it's no secret what Mickey is gonna play. Mickey is gonna play e5 and is gonna go into the Roy Lopez. And he's gonna play the Marshall, most likely. Well, Mickey played the Marshall even before Marshall became such established opening that White started fear it and avoid it. He played it even at that time when people thought, okay, the Marshall, I'm a pawn up and whatever. So Mickey is one of the people who helped the Marshall to get re-established as a legitimate opening. When I say re-established, well, there are three periods in the history of the Marshall. Period number one is the game that started at all. The game between Capablanca and Marshall. Alright, Marshall was the guy who played the Marshall. Alright. Then it was forgotten for a long time, and then in mid-1960s, Spassky used it as a surprise weapon against Tal in their candidates match. Tal obviously was looking to attack the king in a complex Spanish middle game, not to sit there and preserve the small advantage of one extra pawn, possibly some opposite color. Bishop position, so it was not his cup of tea. So Spassky did not win a single game, but largely took out Tal's weapons with the white pieces and won the match on the strength of this choice. And then for many years, once again, the Marshall is forgotten on the shelf, gathering dust. And then Mickey was one of the people who brought it back. Alright, so d5. Okay, forget about this, guys. Had to go through all these things. Yeah, so anyway. Yeah, people used to play d4 here quite automatically. It is working, yeah, it should. It was just a brief interruption in my internet service. I don't know why. I used to play d4 here, but now, well, this move d3. I guess fighting for the e4 square, because one problem that White has is that when he puts the pawn on d4, it's hard for him to cover the e file, and his pieces are not developed. I mean, there is nothing wrong with the pawn structure and having the extra pawn and all that, but I mean, you still need to develop your pieces. So for that, d3 is an interesting idea to give control to the e4 square. And now they followed this theoretical line. Queen h4. Oh, fancy move, right? Leaving the bishop unattended. It's actually not the only move that can be played here. I believe that I have it written down that Svidwar played Queen f6 against Anand. and moved his queen to g6. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, there was another big game. Magnus Carlsen, whose opening knowledge probably ended at that moment, played bishop g6. Kind of a obvious move, pulling the bishop back against Anand in that tournament, right? That I started talking about the Norway tournament, the first leg of the Grand Tour. And in that game, actually, no, it wasn't. Wrong. Well, in the Norway tournament, Anand defeated Magnus, but it was a different, closed variation of the Roy Lopez. No, that's from the Gashimov Memorial earlier this year in Shamkir, Azerbaijan. In that game, Magnus was lost. Not because of the move bishop g6. Bishop g6 is probably inferior, but not that bad, to give black a losing position immediately. He made this mistake later. But anyway, the reason I'm telling you all this just to illustrate that this variation is very commonly played now, and it's a popular variation. So there they went, and all this, and now White had given up this pawn in order to complete his development. Now this, as you might tell, a typical kind of a computer situation, because it is hard for White to play like this, unless it is supported by a computer, by your computer, because you've given up the pawn and he can take on e3 and get the bishop there. But then White develops very quickly and he controls the open e file with his rooks. Serious pressure against f7 also gonna be a factor. So queen f5, which I think had been played already. Yeah, and now bishop d4. Alright, so White is playing for very little, but these days I think the top players, they came to realize that there are some openings where White just gets frustrated because he cannot get this big game going like you would like to have when you're a White. Say maybe in the Sicilian. I mean, you understand the risks and maybe you can push too hard and then you can fall victim to a counterattack, but you get the game going. That's what Kasparov wanted to have against Kramnik, and he didn't. He couldn't get it in that Berlin. And before the Berlin, there was the Petrov, and there is the Marshall somewhere. It's like these three openings all coming out of e4, e5, where White gets terribly frustrated. How to deal with this? Do you quit and you start playing d4 and c4 on move 1? Well, when Kasparov did it in this match with Kramnik, he obviously didn't succeed at all. Maybe he wasn't well prepared. Then some players had many years to work on it. Some of them, like Peter Svidler, completely switched over to d4. Did it bring Svidler any success? I don't think so. I think he's more of a natural e4 player, and d4 never really fit his style. Anand had, relatively speaking, more success with that switch, but still I believe Anand is more dangerous when he plays e4. Proof? That's what he plays against Magnus Carlsen, right? It's not a bad idea to switch, but I mean, if you want to become like a switch hitter and hit from both sides, you better do it in the early stage of your career. I do not know of any baseball players who learn to become switch hitters already in major leagues. No. They do it early in their career in the little league somewhere. So, the solution is found, but it's more like difficult to mentally agree to this. You just agree to a small advantage and you're trying to frustrate black. You're just trying to, basically the message you're sending is this. Fair enough. You know you're opening well. You agree to play it. You think you're gonna make a draw every time. Fine. Just do it every time. But do it every time. I'm happy to win 1 out of 3. Maybe I'll take 1 out of 4. Because these guys, they mainly play each other, and they know that only the very big guys, you know, can get this far. And so they don't really have to worry about, oh, I'm making too many draws with white. On their level, when they play each other, the same 10 people, three different tournaments a year, maybe indeed they would take 1 win out of 3 and be happy with that. So that's the message Vachier-Lagrave is sending to his opponent. And a lot of people felt, okay, Vachier-Lagrave is not the kind of guy to do this. He's no Kramnik, no Anand, and no Carlsen. So he would just rebel against this, and he would play something else, and then maybe I even get a chance to beat him with black. Now, as Maxime matured and accepted the strategy, which I believe is the only strategy to deal with those annoying openings. Look at Fabiano Caruana. He plays against Berlin every time he has a chance. Twice already he beat Magnus Carlsen on the white side of this. Same thing here. This is the kind of position you're going to get in the Marshall. Finding your opening style. Alright, so that has to be... largely is going to be your character. Well, probably there are some traits in your character that represent itself in your chess playing. I'm not saying that every attacking player is a hulking, 6'1", like guy with history of bullying everybody, and every positional player is, smallish, bookish, glass-wearing, nerdy type. Of course not. It's not like this. But maybe you just don't want to wait for these pieces to come out and go through 15 extra moves of maneuvering before something starts on the chessboard. Maybe you don't have the patience for that. Then don't play c4 on move 1. I mean, play some of e4 or d4 modern opening lines. Invite black to make his choice and be ready to meet the challenge everywhere. Suppose you absolutely love to get to play without the queens. Okay, you play some endgames, if it comes to this, but not immediately out of the opening. No, then certain openings should be out for you. For example, in the Grunfeld, there are many lines when black has to go to the endgame. So, I don't know. Stuff like this. Pace of the game, yeah, how soon the action starts. Safety of the king, of course, I forgot that. I forgot, some people, they just simply cannot stay calm, when their king is not safe, or at least not castled. No, then don't play those Sicilians. Play e4, e5, see your king is castled. So anyway, they got to this, and now... Well, there is something about this move, previous move, rook a8, and I will mention it here. Actually, there was a game where black played the other rook to e8, and keeping that rook to protect the a file. Perhaps Mickey got his variations mixed up. Everything seemed okay here, but... takes there, and then pull the king back. There is no need to take on e6. Because if he took... Amazing restraint, by the way, from Vachier-Lagrave. Then this knight is protected, and black can play c5. That was the idea of rook e6. But look at MVL. He just plays king g2. Is this what? Is this the swashbuckling, like, I don't know, well, French hero from novels of Alexander Dumas, or is it Anatoly Karpov? Young Karpov squeezing small advantages. Well, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, These days, you gotta be a universal player. You still have room for your style and preference, but you gotta be able to play many kinds of positions. And perhaps MVL is on his way there. Now he traded and c4. Now this is very good. And, yeah, maybe some slight mistakes here. particularly that check. No, it cost Mickey as bishop pair. Maybe there was nothing wrong with bishop c7, you know, just to keep that bishop there. I know it's frustrating to keep the bishop there when the only pawn you can attack is protected 3 times over and unassailable, but I mean, as a defensive piece, this bishop is quite good. No, restricts the white knight. Giving up the bishop pair is... It has to be justified. Perhaps just tiredness, and I think Mickey was happy to see pieces leaving the board. But no, he did make a concession. Look at MVL now. King f2. Mr. Patience himself. Which cannot be said about Adams. f6. No, yeah, it frustrates you when you cannot bring your king into the middle, particularly since the opponent doesn't seem to be having any issues with that. But here that pins the knight. I know you cannot attack the knight. It's not like you have a pawn to go from e3 to e4. But nonetheless. No, bishop f7 wasn't working. Ryan, at what moment bishop f7? When? When? On what move? Okay, let me go back. I mean, the knight was on d5. Here? Okay. Anyway, sorry about that. I have to... Okay, so anyway, I'm coming to this position and f6. I mean, the knight seems strong enough to just to stay there. But okay, hang on a second, guys. Yeah, I'm having some problems. I lost how the moves went. Yeah, first he goes, and now this is not easy what he did. So he hits this target on c6 and then pulls the bishop back. Yeah, well, Mickey had to cover the back rank. Now it's the problem, because the king is in the cage, right? The bishop's cut off the king. Well, yeah, in the middle game, of course, you'd like to keep your king in the back and all that, you know, covered by pawns and maybe a rook controlling the back rank. But some pieces get exchanged and queens and all that, and you're supposed to bring your king a little closer, because maybe you want to exchange away from the moment when your king has to become a very active piece. And all the same, the king boxed in like the black king now is actually a target for those surprising endgame attacks. Already white can ignore the threat to the bishop because he's threatening mate. I don't know, well, maybe the next move was not the most accurate, because MVL went bishop e7 and... No, Mickey had a chance to go here and grab that pawn, but it looks so scary, right? Because how you gonna stop the mate? Suppose bishop d6, right? Stopping knight c7, mate is coming. Actually, there is this possibility here. And then rook e2. I think Adams was just tired and he missed it. Too close to time control. You think you're gonna get mated and you think the opponent would not just have given you a pawn like that. But, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, that it's bad for white. This whole thing can never be bad for white. Actually, white has pretty good winning chances, maybe even in this position, even down a pawn. But, I mean, still black had to go for it. One chance he had and he missed it on move 37. And now after b4, this is a terrible squeeze, right? Maybe last chance to get that knight back into play, put the knight on d5. Just hang tough. But even tough fighters like Mickey Adams, they get old and they get tired. In his desire to break out of this prison, he miscalculated, played c5. What he missed is the attack on his rook, because now the rook is tied up to the c file. Otherwise, it's a simple loss of a pawn, and it's just not working out because of this. Yep. So anyway, so he went here, there, took, gave up the exchange. No, well, there's nothing to do here. I mean, game is lost because he's gonna get behind this pawn with his rook, and then he's gonna take, and all the endgames with rook versus bishop and 3 pawns each. Yeah. Okay. So that's the first game. No, well, important win. Every win is important in a company like this. You know, they're tough guys. They don't give you points for nothing. And no, well, leapfrogging his opponent immediately in the standings. That's why, just like that. And but I still didn't think after I saw this game that MVL had it in him to really mount a big comeback in this tournament. The only 2 rounds to go. And then next was David Navarro. No, we used to, of course, Navarro, you know, doing the seesaw up and down, you know, and that's just been the story of him. And it's probably never gonna change. But in this tournament in particular, it seemed like there were 2 or 3 times when Navarro was on the upswing and then he would lose a game and just drop down. So there was also a question of catching David Navarro at the right moment of his up and down movement, and I guess, you know, well, and I guess in that way, you know, well, MVL got a little lucky because no, Navarro seemingly was getting tired toward the end of the tournament and not playing as well as he did early in the tournament. Alright, so off we go. Now, David can play anything. I don't know if it was a good choice for him. It's very well known that Vachier-Lagrave is a great expert on the black side of this Botvinnik English. I played it already many times. It's possible that Navarro counted not on knight e7, because knight e7 is considered to be a slight inaccuracy. Most people play this. The difference being that you want to play bishop e6 and hit the pawn before the white knight continues its journey to e3. So you want to force white to spend a move on d3, then you play this, and then you can play d5 before the knight arrives to e3. It makes d5 impossible. So with that in mind, usually it's d6, but knight e7 was played and Navarro goes knight e1. And there are some games, obviously d6, here, and there. Okay, d5 is ruled out, and then white will put the e3 knight to d5. So that's the end of the journey. It takes this knight from f3, 4 moves to arrive in d5, but that's good. And the c3 knight stays there to slow down b5 and support the knight on d5. Now, is white better there or not? I don't know. My friend James Shabalov doesn't think so. He says, I don't care for all this. I play my queen d7, and I play castles. I go bishop h3, then I go f5, and I'm happy. Maybe he has a point. Whatever it was, Navarre never got a chance to show us his preparation because Vachier-Lagrave played this move. Now, I played this many times as black, and probably a couple of times I faced it when I was white. I've never seen this idea. It turns out it's not a novelty. Now, you may ask me what the idea is. Oh well, hang on. The idea is if you go knight c2, there's your banker gambit. There you go. You give up a pawn to put your pawn on d5. Nice, attractive idea. I don't know really. I mean, d3 was played, now rook b8. No, insisting on b5. In itself, there is nothing new about a6 and rook b8. Very common for the symmetrical English, and black is ahead of white. So white is too late to counter with his own. So b5 is going to be played. I don't know, then appears that black is okay. I mean, white should probably ignore it, right? Play something like knight c2, b5, knight there. You can always take with the d pawn, and it's not a problem, right? You got the d file and a backward pawn over there. So I guess black... Oops! What did I just do? Click on the wrong button. Alright, let me catch up. Forget a4. I hate the sight of a4. No, this. Black probably is not gonna take, and they can keep this tension for a long time, but eventually white will put the knight on d5. I mean, it's still equal, right? The castling is not wrong, so castling is fine. Everything's fine here, like, you just have this game. I mean, you play c4, what do you want? You want a big advantage? Well, obviously not. I mean, you play c4 on move 1 and, well, actually here on move 2. You gotta be ready to play positions like this. So that's the thing with David Navarre sometimes. Sometimes he chooses his openings, and I'm not sure he's happy with his choices, but I mean, who made him play this? He can play e4 or d4 on move 1. I don't know. So, he goes this a4. I don't like this, making a hole on b4. Maybe he was thinking that he will make a threat of b4, playing b4 himself like this. Yeah, that's true, but black answers with a5. Now, we have a symmetrical position, alright? Now, what's the difference is that the position of the knights, c2 versus e7. Now, white already took 3 moves to get the knight to c2. Is it better position than the knight on e7? I guess not. Now, e5. Well, yeah, making a hole on d5, but I mean, seriously, even if white has a knight on d5, such as in this line, knight e3, it didn't happen in the game. Knight e d5. He cannot use this knight to create any kind of play on the queen side. The queen side is totally locked. And on the king side, black has already a pawn on a5. And he's going to get things going. Now, to offset the position of this knight, he's going to go knight b4. And this leads to nothing. And then go queen d7. And then you engineer this exchange. And then maybe you go your rook f7 and f5 and the other rook to f8. Black's very comfortable here. He's the only one with any kind of visible play. Alright, it's no secret that some talented players never learn to be good defenders. Well, Navarre is the case to study. Well, when things go his way, he can beat, I guess, anybody. Or pretty much anybody. But the lack of resilience and the tendency to sink, well, when sink to the bottom, when the few punches were landed, and on his chin. Whatever, glass chin. That's not good. Yeah. Oh, he plays this. F5. And now F4. I don't know about F4. He's trying to counter, but I think black, this knight on E7 is better suited for this than the knight on C2. So essentially already he's playing black. Okay, this move, same idea, obviously. And he took on E5, which is risky. Obviously David didn't like this, because it improves black's pawn structure. But the threat of bishop g5 is gonna force black to exchange on d5 and give up his bishop. What do you make of this position? I would prefer to be black here because of the pawn structure on the queen side. But the knight on e7 is not currently active. Maybe white can be successful here, I'm not sure. Unsafe king for both sides. No, black's most unsafe king is in the Sicilian. White's king, white often comes victim of counterattack in the Sicilian. Doesn't matter which side he castles. So I don't know. Unsafe king for white and what opening? No, if you play the classical line against the king's Indian, allowing black to put his pawn on f5 and f4 and prepare for g4 breakthrough, your king is probably unsafe. Yeah, so anyway, this was probably better, but David took, now this happened. There was one last moment. Ah, okay, here. Oh. It's not like David Navarro doesn't know that white's not supposed to be capturing pawns like this. I'm sure if you ask him, what do you think of this position, he would say black has compensation and more. So the reason he takes on a5 is as I described, because he just can't defend. So he has to provoke the crisis. Even if he knows objectively that the moves he plays are not good, he would play it because the worst thing for him is to be in a worse position with some uncertainty where the opponent and where and when the opponent's gonna strike. So that's what, I mean, the lack of ability to put up a resilient defense leads to accepting variations like this. Sad. In a way, yeah. Maybe it would be better, you know, if you would say, okay, this 30-year-old talented grandmaster simply doesn't anticipate black to go f4 and go after his king, and therefore he lost the game. I assure you it was not the case. This whole thing, you know, will just, with bishop takes a5, just looks suicidal. Now, there is only one way, in my opinion, to try to make something out of this, but it's not gonna work. There would be to do something like this, and now, of course, you must play e4, otherwise you get mated. You shut off that bishop, but the pin is... If it wasn't for the pin, that stupid knight on c2, it just ruins everything. And now white simply doesn't have the time to bring his pieces and stop black's attack. It's going to be queen check followed by rook down, because the queen is tied up to the defense of that pinned knight. Yeah, this is done. I would say the game is pretty much done after f4. Okay, once again, well, should I stop clicking on this thing? Oh boy, you know, I'm just not operating this software, Blitzen, well enough. Should spend more time, you know, like actually blitzen, to learn my blitzen. That's what I need to do. Yeah, f4. It's practically over here. He played queen e1, I mean, what can I say about this? He cannot take the pawn back on e3. He would lose, right? Yeah. He would lose if he took based on this and then that. That's a loss of the knight. Yeah, figures. Knight a3. Now, simple solution. Now, another thing about Vachier-Lagrave. Probably this is not a really good indication because it's just such a simple position for black to win. But the way MVL finished his games was very efficient. It was very efficient and simple, and he wasn't trying to complicate the situation unnecessarily. Like here, why bother and looking for some mates when you have a winning endgame? Because of the strong passed pawn. So importantly, he was always making the threats of attacking the queen and removing the blockade. Like in this situation, he gave up b7. It's rather unimportant. The a-pawn is not going anywhere. And then this. The bishop on c3 controls both e1 and b2. That's how it's done, guys. And then here, and very accurately, rook to the second. This is queen, check, double check, wins the game. Well, having to play on the first line seems symptomatic club level play. No, well, look, not every 2750 player or 2700 player is a true 2750 player in all aspects of the game. Well, most of them are not. They have something that they know very well. For example, Wojtaszek. I mean, obviously, as far as his opening preparation goes, he is 2800 player. I mean, he's sitting there basically making openings for Anand, for World Championship matches. Now it goes out there. Alright. So he is the Carlsen of the opening, and the Carlsen is the Wojtaszek of the middle game and the end game. How about that? Now, the sum of these all different things is unequal. Now, altogether, Wojtaszek is probably at best a 2750 player, and Magnus is Magnus. But in certain stages of the game, in this case the opening, Wojtaszek is stronger than Carlsen. Now, we have Navarra, who plays very well when he has the advantage on the initiative. And he has the fantasy too and ability to do these ridiculous things, like bringing his king to h8. But when he finds himself in a worse position, particularly when he's white, I noticed that too, and he doesn't expect to be worse, that's what happens to him. I don't know, is that self-pity? It doesn't seem like a pouting guy. I mean, I don't know why is that he simply cannot just work up his guts, to fight and defend. I don't know. He needs to learn this, because time's running out on him. He's 30 years old. Already been around at this practically on the same level for 10 years. Which is not too shabby, obviously. He's a visible grandmaster, but, well, I want them all to be in top 10 in Golden Chess Tour, in Kasparov, shake Kasparov's hand and go from Jakarta to Singapore to London to New York, Moscow. Okay, Moscow we're not going to go with Kasparov anymore. Jerusalem then. Yeah. I don't know. I want this top 10 in the world to be like this thing, with Volkswagen Bug, when college kids set a world record by how many people can fit into the Volkswagen Bug, and it's like, I don't know, 30 people or something. But you gotta be a contortionist to do this. But yeah, that's what I wish them. I wish them only success. Alright, so that's second win in a row, and Well, good times are rolling for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Now the last round. He came to the last round in a tie with Wojtaszek. And Wojtaszek actually had a totally winning position at some moment of this of his last round game, and he managed to blow it and didn't win in the end. I think he was white against Navarra. Yeah, and Navarra, who was tail spinning, and well, after 20, no, maybe not 20, 25 moves, it had to be decided as Wojtaszek's win, guaranteeing him at least a share of first place, but he kept on missing winning moves and ended up not winning the game at all. In the meantime, Vachier-Lagrave gets the bottom feeder, Richard Rapport. Alright, you guys said it yourself about garbage openings. Yeah, well, I mean, this was played by... Okay, when I say it's played by Joel Benjamin, I don't really mean that it's garbage, but it's like, it's not garbage when Joel plays it. Joel is always been our in-house specialist on unorthodox openings. He had a column in Chess Life, Unorthodox Openings by Joel Benjamin, for years and years. And when he plays it, he knows what he's doing. Thus the Snake Benoni and all other weird things. And he played this line. And Benjamin is also very smart as when to play it. He doesn't keep those openings for a long time, because eventually people catch on. Now, alright, the line. Okay, hang on a second, I want to open my analysis. Yeah, the main line which Rapport wanted to see on the board is this. I guarantee it, because he played it before. Benjamin played it too with black, some other people played it, and it's fairly well studied now. I think, I'm not sure exactly, but I think there are some improvements for black that currently allow black to hold a draw. In the very long lines, somewhere. I mean, obviously, black is going to be giving up that rook on a8, maybe. White is going to be dealing with knight takes e4, capture with the pin, and whatever might come out of this, and you castle long. He will later take on c3 and mess up your king after b takes. Alright, you guys can study this in your spare time, I have only a few minutes to cover this whole thing. Yeah, and then, you're right, this this move g3, yeah. Oh yeah, treating this thing, same way as you treat the Pierce with the pawn on g6, how Karpov did it. Now, you may ask me, why not play g3 against a regular Philidor? Because then you can hardly force black to take. I've actually played this kind of a regular Philidor without the capture on d4 against the setup with the knight on e2 and the bishop on g2. And I had some success on the black side of this. But I would not take on d4. Here the capture on d4 took place too early. Now, yeah, it's easy for me to sit there and talk about all this opening little nuances, details, and does Richard Rapport care for this? He's a genius player, right? No, well, his recent results show that he's a genius player, I mean, up to a certain level. So he beats up basically on a bunch of 2500s, maybe like me. But I've seen better days. And I can tell you that he has to ditch this attitude together with the openings. He has to start playing serious chess. That's my advice to Richard Rapport. What happened to him in this tournament is 2 out of 10. And it's not like he faced Nakamura and Caruana in every game and Topalov. So these guys, you know, the second tier players. I don't know if I can call them second tier. I don't know what it is. But this tournament was certainly much weaker than the Sinquefield Cup. It was also weaker than the Grand Prix, any of the Grand Prix tournaments. It's basically just a JM tournament. And the best you can do is 2 out of 10. He has to do some serious work here. Now, and it starts right here. Play d5. Now, I hear this knight d2 g3 setup seems to put this line in bad shape. Yes, Ron, but there is d5. Until d5 is completely figured out here, we cannot close this chapter. And this was played, I understand, it was a blitz game, but nonetheless, white was Magnus Carlsen, black was Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. And that game, being a blitz game, fine, doesn't matter, Mamedyarov won. But this is still a high-profile game. Means people would be looking at this move. After e5 to go knight e4. That's how it is. Alright, you don't like that? Long time ago people figured out that it could be useful to provoke the move f3. It really, in some ways, ruins white's setup. Because the bishop now is going to be blocked by its own pawn. And the bishop d7 move is not so bad. So you provoke that and you don't go back to c8. You come to d7, followed by knight c6. This gives black better chances to equalize. Instead, castles. Okay. Once again, speaking of Vachier-Lagrave and his mature approach to all this. Yeah, in old days, capture on c6, go e5. I don't know, messy. Well, particularly with the pawn on h3. You ask me why the pawn on h3. At some moment, just like about now, bishop takes h3. Unclear. Very much so. I don't even know if white can win the exchange. Maybe he can, maybe he cannot. Right, MVL. You don't need that. Absolutely you don't. b3. I would say, however, that keeping in mind what happened in the game, I would probably prefer this move, rook a1. I know it's dull, I know it's kind of standard and primitive, but this move has a lot of uses. While knight c4 currently is no big deal. You go queen c1, you can always kick him out. You may even be happy that you attack c6 now, and I mean, can do. Oh, by the way, maybe you can. No, you cannot take on c6. Maybe, but okay. Anyway, I don't really care for this move. Now I have this threat, and I have b3 coming up. So rook a1, I think, would be the best choice. After this, I gotta give some credit to Rapport. He finds an interesting idea. Now, looks very suspicious. But, no, credit goes where credit's due. Despite a bad losing streak, Rapport is fighting. This is what he prepared. A great shot. That's the point. Look. Fork. You cannot take the bishop. You want that exchange? Be my guest. Then we have mates and the pawn on h3 and the fork with the knight, and the e4 knight is out of play. And we all, once again, maturity goes to b5. Oh, a lot is said about, well, when you have a, it's good to have a guy like Jabava or Rapport, because they always play entertaining chess. Now, and they say, even if they're off form, it's better for the organizers to have them rather than guy, who would make a bunch of draws. Yeah, it's also better for other participants of the tournament. Rather than deal with the tough guy who will make a lot of draws, Peter Leko style. You have a guy who will lose a lot of games, and will have a guy who's maybe has ideas, but he cannot execute and calculate them. Oh, I love people like this. Bring them, guys. Bring them. Bring your talent. Bring your ideas. He had one acceptable continuation here, which was bishop a6. And after c4, he has to move the queen out. No, well, I know the structure and the white squares, but importantly, well, he's about to grab this pawn on b5. Now, this knight remains out of play. This is acceptable. Now, what he did, the flushy move d5, is not acceptable. It wasn't well calculated. Yeah, maybe he counted on this. Indeed, if white plays something like this, no, okay, then... Yeah, there is this exchange sacrifice and stuff like that. Well, with the knights stuck like that and the bishop pair, maybe it's playable. Okay, maybe. King d5. He took on h3, playing for this fork. Now, an attempt to win the knight, I'm sure both players saw knight c7. You win the knight, but then comes d6. And white is on top. Now, one last critical thing here is this. It's not just a rook for two pieces. No, rather not. It's knight b6 followed by d7. It's winning the exchange, ultimately. Up the exchange. Because white has three pieces to support d7. Am I a gem? Jesus. I mean, look at me, look how old I am, you know. Is it really possible to play chess for as long as I have and not to become a grandmaster? I know. Yeah. So this whole thing, so he tried this bishop h3. There's hardly any accurate calculation behind it. White could have played d6, that would be good. But he went for this. Now, this is an extra pawn. And a pretty good one at that, right? A pawn on d5. Now, alright, suppose you're a brilliant attacker like Navarra, and then you'll win every game against players of your caliber and possibly higher if you get your kind of position. Alright, with that you're weak on defense and whatever, you have too many bad days, and that's why your rating goes up to 2750, then you drop down to 2700. Very good, very good. And then you have rapport, okay? This position, it's unusual. I mean, he's supposed to be this master of unorthodox play, unusual positions with strange pawn structures, and it's really very asymmetrical. Black actually has a pawn advantage on the queen side. He has the blockade on d6. I mean, this 4 against 2, and I'm showing you all the pawns, well, they're not about to overwhelm black. It's not like it's 3 connected pass pawns side by side, just wiping you off the board. You're given a little bit of time. And you play this, and opponent plays this, and then you start trading pieces. I know you cannot avoid this trade, but use this opportunity to bring your bishop in active position. There is hardly any future in defending passively, besides how much fun it is when you're already 2 out of 9. Oh, crying loud, just play h5. Play one active move. Yeah, they're afraid of the d pawn. No, alright. Let's try to block it. The d file, and I'm hoping to play h4 and make some threats against this. I actually almost have queen takes and then queen takes g3. Perhaps I shouldn't be giving up my rook. Maybe I should play this. In reply to knight e2, I have this trick. Watch out, guys. Now I don't have to take, I can first take on d6. White is pinned, and white will probably go c3. We will trade. I'm not entirely convinced that black is gonna lose this game. And these are just lines that basically, they're on the surface. You know, well, a lot of people, they rather feel liberated. You know your position is bad. Maybe if you had a good position, well, maybe you would think twice before playing h5. But facing the prospects of this passive defense against the overwhelming white's advantage, who wouldn't try for h5, h4? I simply don't get it. Look at for the end of this game. Now, MVL, he's like a rock now. I mean, he doesn't have any doubts. He doesn't let any doubts, to creep into his mind. He just converts his advantage in the most direct way. He has confidence now. I think he has turned the corner. I think he's on fire, guys. I think he's on fire. I know those little boys, Navarre and Rapport and Noel Adams is kind of past his prime. But 3 in a row, that's a good sign. Man, just stay on fire. Nice tongues, by the way. Wow. He's on fire. Look how he finished the move. A stupid move, Queen b6. Don't let the bishop in unnecessary. Of course now the bishop gets in. But watch this. How to unblock, how to remove this blockade from d6. It's just amazing how MVL solved this problem. He makes threats against the king. That is his idea. At some moment to go over there. h5. Alright, that made the whole structure weaker. Did I like h5 in my analysis? Yeah, I kind of looked at bishop e5 and then I thought bishop there is counterattack. Nah. First f5 will be provoked and now the pieces will return. Here, here and there. Now we intercept the e file. Look out for this. e8 under control. We're gonna stick that rook on e6 and we'll take it from there. White should be winning. h5. Now back. And now comes the decisive infiltration. Oh, this is great. The queen comes to f6. And the last shot. Really the last shot in the game. Alright, so the queen has to guard f7, that is clear. And on bishop takes, of course this and that. Extra pawn, attack on c5, open king, 1-0. Rapport played this, f3 was nice, and now to the endgame. Important, right? Have a winning endgame, no reason to look elsewhere. He had a quicker win, but who cares? It's a win. Win is a win is a win. Check him. Grab that one. 2 pawns ahead. And some moves that didn't matter at all. Now this. I mean, with the rooks on the board, clearly there would be no chance for any kind of fortress, and the black king is in no man's land. But all the same, if you do it the way he did, he resigned, by the way, here, then white it just paves the way for the king. Now this is easy, right? This is so easy. We're just gonna go a3 and b4, and there is no way black can set up any kind of blockade. Anyway, so Rapport resigned, and that completed amazing comeback. Last 3 rounds, 3 wins for MVL, and he wins his 4th Biel tournament. And most importantly, he convinces me now that he has turned the corner and he's ready to play for real. against the big boys in the Sinquefield Cup. Now I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Vachier-Lagrave is gonna finish this tournament in among the winners, among top 3 finishers in St. Louis. All right, I will stop short before bringing in the proverbial eating of the hat or eating crow, but whatever. And it's my prediction, put it down there. MVL finishes in top 3 at the Sinquefield Cup. Yep, MVL's execution is great. Okay, anyway, I've said it all, and I'm 11 minutes past the allocated time. So, guys, thank you for being with me, and just be active and participate more. I always wait for your comments to come up. And our next meeting, the same format, is going to be 2 weeks from now on the 20th. Now, if you want to know what I'm going to be talking about, most likely it's going to be the Russian Super Final, which is going to start the day after tomorrow. Thank you, and have a good one.